God King Tualaman, divine emperor of the glorious Golden Horde and the most powerful being in the galaxy, struggled against his restraints. The indignity was worse than the pain. To be kidnapped by a lowly pirate was absolutely unthinkable. He had once ordered planets destroyed and species exterminated on a whim. Trillions of beings, dozens of species worshipped him as a deity. He was supposed to be untouchable. "There will be a reckoning for this, human," he bellowed through swollen lips, orange blood spraying across the room. His captor turned to him and scoffed, cuffing him roughly across the head. "Behave, your highness, or I'll pull out another tooth," it said happily, holding up a pair of pliers. "Do not dare to touch me. I am a god, you fucking ape. You are nothing but a pirate." He raged at the humiliation, screaming every insult he knew at the human, who only chuckled in response. He had been captive for days, and they had tortured him when he had refused to speak to the lowly creatures. He had broken eventually, but it wouldn't matter when his fleet arrived to rescue him. He was positive that Admiral Daka would be on the way, and there was nothing in the galaxy that could stand against them. The vermin would be destroyed, and every last human in the galaxy hunted down and slaughtered. Fleet Captain Barbarossa was feeling exceptionally cheerful. Every one of the Emperor's insults washed over him like a hot bath, warming him to his very soul. He relished in the anger it directed at him, hating the creature for all it represented. Decades of planning, countless lives, and thousands of hours had all led him to this moment. He could barely contain his excitement. He had personally led the raid on the Emperor's flagship, ambushing them in deep space. The losses they had taken rankled him, but he knew the men had gladly given their lives for this opportunity. It had required every ounce of his self-control not to immediately put a bullet in the slimy fucker's thick skull, but it would be well worth the effort of his restraint. He would make sure of it. "What do you know of humanity, O Majestic One?" he asked suddenly. "Pirates, criminals, primitives," it hissed. "And do you know why we must resort to piracy, O great and mighty shit for brains?" "Because you are vermin," it roared. "You do not build or grow, you only know how to take and steal from your betters." It attempted to spit at him again, dribbling blood from its chin. "Nope, as expected, you know nothing. Let me educate you. Just over 100 cycles ago, your predecessor made first contact with Earth, our home world. Do you know what happened during that meeting?" Silence from the creature. "The Golden Horde demanded that we enter your service as slaves. We refused, naturally, and you cracked Earth in half. Billions died." The Emperor laughed. It actually fucking laughed. What a prick, he thought. "As was our right. You were weak and we are strong. Earth deserved it." He ignored the jibe. "Traitors, you named us with orders to shoot any surviving human on sight. We are ostracized on every planet, forced to scrape and steal just to survive. We rely on the black market, but even there we are spat on. You once claimed you would put an end to human piracy, your fuxcellency. Well, today you may help to achieve that." The Emperor looked worried, but remained silent. A human crewman entered the room and saluted. "Captain, there are Empire ships approaching. 5 minutes until they exit warp. It looks like they brought the entire fleet." The Emperor laughed again. "You fools! You have brought ruin on yourselves. You didn't realize my fleet would have a way of finding me?" "Of course we did," he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. "We were counting on it." The flagship rattled dangerously as it was pushed to its limits. Admiral Daka stalked the bridge, barking unnecessary orders at the harassed crew. He knew that this would be his last campaign. As soon as the Divine Emperor was safe, he would take his own life to pay for his failure to protect him. A 50-cycle career ended in shame and dishonor. It felt like he had been fighting the pirates his whole life. Opportunists, they fought dishonorably, materializing without warning to steal anything they could get their dirty little hands on. They would hijack any ship they found unprotected, slaughtering the crew and ejecting the corpses into the cold of space. They refused to enter pitched battle with the Empire, disappearing into the void at the first sign of the fleet. He had slaughtered thousands in his career, though it seemed there were always more. They were never a serious threat, more an annoyance and part of life in the Empire. Humans, he thought, grinding his teeth manically. They were vermin to be shot on sight if they set foot on an Empire planet. That they had grown so bold that they would manage to kidnap the actual Emperor was shocking. He vowed that they would be purged from the galaxy for this. "Exiting warp," came the call from the bridge. The flagship lurched as it exited warp speed, the space around it filling with hundreds of smaller ships. The entire might of the Empire had answered his call. The humans were famously greedy. He would negotiate for the Emperor's release before bringing the might of the fleet to bear, destroying them entirely. "Sir, the signal is coming from within that asteroid belt. I advise caution. It is perfect terrain for a TR." "Advance!" he shouted frantically. "We must not waste a moment whilst the Emperor is in danger." The fleet moved forwards into the asteroids. Captain Barbarossa could barely keep the grin from his face. "Oh, it's too fucking easy. Look at them charging in. Hook, line, and sinker." The Emperor had been brought up to the bridge in chains. His mouth gagged. Through the view screen, they could see the Empire fleet hurtling into the asteroid field at reckless speed, some of the ships dashing themselves against the rocks in their haste. "That looks close enough," he said, straightening his captain's hat. "Open communications." Admiral Daka appeared on the screen. At the sight of the Emperor, battered, bruised, and bound in chains, he sank to his knees in despair. "Please," he begged, "what is your price? Name it and it is yours." Captain Barbarossa struck a flamboyant pose, pretending to consider it. He was enjoying himself immensely. "Admiral Daka, you old prick! How are you?" "Human, please! We are here to negotiate for the Emperor's release. We are willing to—" In one fluid movement, Barbarossa drew a pistol and fired it into the Emperor's head. It exploded into bone, brains, and blood, soaking the captain in filth. Roaring with laughter at the Admiral's expression, he ended the communication. "Let them rip, boys!" The asteroids around the fleet began to explode with impossible force. Nearby ships were torn in half by chunks of debris. The captain stood, staring, the light of the explosions reflected in his eyes. Collecting the materials for the minefield had taken thousands of raids. The cost had been worthwhile, though it wouldn't be enough to destroy the fleet entirely. They needed more. Another siren sounded, and Barbarossa grinned again. "Look, lads! Here comes the cavalry!" The fleet's escape route was suddenly cut off by hundreds of ships, warping in behind them. Human pirate ships of all shapes and sizes, painstakingly built from what scrap the humans could gather, hijacked or stolen. All of them shot their payloads as soon as they materialized. Weapons they had had to beg, steal, or borrow, hoarded for decades, all released in one wild climax. The effect was devastating. Boxed in by the exploding asteroids and the pirates, with nowhere to run, the Empire fleet was annihilated in moments. Barbarossa wept openly. It was fucking beautiful. Decades of planning their revenge had come to fruition. They had lived as outlaws and thieves, struggling to survive, held under the boot of the Empire. But now the Empire was defenseless, and humanity would not be pirates for much longer.